Hello, podcast listeners. We know podcasts are a great way to catch up on a program that you may have missed on KSJE, and it's provided as a free service of this radio station. But you know, KSJE is now listener-supported, and so while you enjoy this podcast, we hope that you'll also take some time to join KSJE. Become a member today. It's quite easy to do. Just go to our website at ksje.com/support and pick the level of support that best matches your budget. Thanks again for listening. Here's your podcast. Ten minutes past 8 o'clock. It is Thursday morning on KSJE, October 21st. Good morning, everybody. I'm Scott Michlin. Thanks for tuning in, and thank you for being with us. Welcome also to our viewers who are watching this visual radio program. It is streaming live this morning out to the KSJE Facebook page, our YouTube channel, and our Twitter account. We're glad that you are with us this morning, everybody, because we're going to talk about elections today with my guest, the county clerk from San Juan County. She is here to talk all about the elections that are coming up and how she organizes all the elections and keeps everything straight. There's a lot to discuss, so that's coming up with Tanya Shelby in the next few moments right here on KSJE. Then later on this hour, our election coverage will continue. As you know, we've been offering free airtime to all of the candidates running in the contested city council races in San Juan County. So our latest guest is coming on later on this morning at 8:50 a.m. Jim Crowley, who is running for Aztec City Commissioner. You'll hear from him later on this morning here on KSJE at 8:50 a.m. Next hour, Mick Hess will take us roving with the arts, our daily classical music program. Mick is featuring music from the great Jean Sibelius this morning. You'll hear some of that coming up today at 9:06 on KSJE. And don't forget, you can also connect with us on our Instagram page, in addition to Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. And if you're a podcast person, you can subscribe for free to KSJE Podcasts wherever you listen to podcasts, popular places like iTunes and Spotify and Pandora and iHeart. Check us out and subscribe and take us with you wherever you go. KSJE Podcasts on these popular apps. Let's talk a little bit about the weather forecast, shall we? It's a cloudy morning so far, 37 degrees outside our studios here at San Juan College. We are expecting a partly cloudy day today with maybe some increasing clouds this afternoon. The high 66 in Farmington, 35 overnight. Mostly sunny skies tomorrow with a high near 70 on Friday. Overnight low of 40. Partly sunny skies Saturday with a high of 67. 64 on Sunday, 72 on Monday. Then maybe another change in the weather with some showers Monday night and a chance of showers on Tuesday with a high of 57 degrees. Well, let me introduce my guest who is here with me this morning to talk about the elections that are coming up. Tanya Shelby is here, the San Juan County Clerk, and thank you for coming over. It's great to see you. Thank you for being here.
It's great to see you, Scott, and I'm honored to be here. Thank you.
Well, thank you. It's a big job, right? Managing elections for San Juan County.
It is.
And in this, we were talking before, you reminded me this is the second year of kind of the combined elections with both local and maybe countywide races, correct?
That is correct. Representative Bandy, he was actually the one that started the bill that went through the legislature. It went through a few times before it actually passed. We, in the past, in 2013, San Juan County conducted 11 elections.
I think I remember that.
Yes.
I was going to the polling place all the time, it seemed, that year.
You were. And, you know, if you think about it, that's taxpayer dollars.
Yeah.
First and foremost, it's expensive to conduct an election.
Right.
And
so the idea with Representative Bandy's legislation was to try to combine some of these.
It was to consolidate them and to reduce voter fatigue.
Got it.
So the idea is that every first Tuesday after the first Monday in November of every year, voters will go to the polls and they will vote.
Which is what we're going to do.
That's what we're going to do this year.
That's right. And so so that is, again, for a county as geographically large as San Juan County, that's a lot of things to keep track of, but having them all on one date, I think, probably makes it a little bit more easy to organize for folks in your office, doesn't it?
An election is a lot of work regardless.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Okay. But not having to do it 13 separate times has to be a little better,
yes,
or 11 separate times.
It is. This time on the ballot is a county question. So this is a 100% county-wide election.
And that's good to point out for folks who maybe are listening and watching us this morning that maybe thought, well, I don't live in a district that's having a county commission or, a city council race or a city commission race or a school board race, so I don't need to go vote. But you do. You do. Because there's this county question on the ballot.
Yes. There's a lot on the ballot. And I would encourage voters to go to our website, which is www.sjcclerk.net. And once you're there, you can click and actually view or print your sample ballot.
That's unique to me, kind of.
Unique to the voter.
To the voter,
100%,
right.
Yes, because you may only have the question for the county, or you may have a college board member, a city council member, soil and water.
Yeah.
Members are also on the...
there's some judges up for election, I think.
No judges. This is a nonpartisan election, so there's no judges. There is a Farmington School is having a bond question. So if you're in the Farmington School District.
Right.
So we actually have over 57 ballot combinations.
Okay.
So definitely important to go in and view your ballot before you go to the polls.
Definitely. Very true. I thought there was a Farmington municipal judge.
So you are correct. The municipalities has a...
Thank you.
Yes,
okay.
they do. Thanks for the clarification.
That's
yes.
what I was meaning,
yes.
But you're right. It's confusing if you're not careful. And so the ballot, it's important to take a look at it to see what you're going to be asked to decide on.
Bloomfield also has a municipal judge.
Thank you. There you go. So and folks can start voting. Early voting has started, right?
Early voting actually started in my office on October 5th.
Yeah.
But then last Saturday on the 16th, all of our alternate sites opened. We have 6 now. I'm very pleased to be able to offer that to the voters of San Juan County. So we have, of course, the county clerk's office in Aztec, and our hours are from 7 a.m. to 7 p.m.
Right.
And then our alternate sites, we have Bloomfield Cultural Center. We have Gateway.
The Farmington Museum.
Farmington
Gateway
Museum.
Park. Right.
We have the Farmington Library.
Mm-hmm.
We have Shiprock CCSD Business Office. We have the Newcomb Fire Station.
Right. Those are those locations.
And those hours are from 11 a.m. to 7 p.m. Monday through Friday, and then Saturday's hours are 10 to 6.
Gotcha. And so that you mentioned, and it is something to be proud of, I think, to have all these different locations. Again, as I mentioned, in a county as geographically large as San Juan County, that means that any county resident can go to any of these locations and get their ballot printed up and available to them to vote.
Yes, especially during early voting, and then on election day, we have 33 voting convenience centers that are open to the voters. And each of those are listed on our website. And consistency for the voters to me is important, so we use the same 33 for all elections.
Gotcha. They can go back to the same place that they're used to going to, and
yes.
that's an important thing to mention as well. These voting convenience centers are, again, I think I told you before we came on the air this morning, I thought they were just amazing that you were able to, again, if I lived in Blanco, but I could walk into Newcomb and they'd print up my ballot like I was in a Blanco voting place, but it doesn't matter where you are. That
is the whole idea of the voting convenience center. If you're on your way out of town and you forget that you needed to vote, you can even stop at Newcomb. You could on election day, you could stop at Nosh Chitty. A voter can go anywhere in the county and vote. And
so and that is, again, through technology, you're able to do that, obviously, right?
Yes, we are.
I mean, that's one of the things that technology has allowed you to be able to do and offer to the voters.
It's actually a tax savings to the voter, too, because I've been in the office for 28 years. So in the past, we used to have pre-printed ballots. Well, you can never gauge what your voter turnout's going to be, right? You always have to make sure you have enough.
Right, of course.
But with the ballot on demand system, you're paying for the system.
Right.
And you don't have excess ballots. I think there were some counties years ago that had millions of dollars that were wasted by pre-printed ballots. So yes, we do use a ballot on demand system. That system tracks you, whether you're an absentee voter or an early voter. In order to do a voting convenience center, they all talk to each other.
Right.
So a voter can't go to one site and vote and then go to a different site and try to vote. They will be the poll worker receives a notification that the voter has already voted.
Got you. And that's important, I think, to note, because I know a lot of folks are concerned about election security and things like that. So that's built into this system that we are using in San Juan County.
It is. I have a good example of that. So in our office, we always start 28 days with early voting. We actually had a couple that came in and they were on their way out of town. They were going on vacation. And I specifically remember, I'm always the first voter. I always want to test the system. So at 7:01, I'm voting.
Okay.
That's a privilege as clerk that
Sure.
I take.
All right.
But anyhow, we had a couple that came in. They made the comment they were headed out. They wanted to make sure that they voted. In case they didn't come back in time or that way it was out of the way. Well, the same couple came to Gateway on election day and, stated their name, because you have to state your name,
right.
your year of birth, and you have to verify your address. And the poll workers received the message, this voter has voted early in the San Juan County Clerk's office at 7:34 a.m. on
First day, right?
Yes.
That 28 days prior.
Yes. Unfortunately, the voters didn't remember. I really don't think that they were out there truly trying to test the system. I really believe they didn't remember.
Well, it was a month ago. I can't remember what I had for breakfast, so I understand.
And they were
how that
frustrated.
could happen.
Unfortunately, they were frustrated with my poll workers, but my poll workers were doing their job. Mm-hmm. They came over to Aztec. We pulled their voter registration form. We pulled their application that they signed the very first day. I glanced at them, of course. The signatures matched. Take them up to the counter, show them to the voter, and they're like, they remembered.
I
said, "Is this your signature?" "Yes, it is." And they said, "You are absolutely correct." And then, of course, then they're worried because is it considered voter fraud that they're trying to vote again?
Right.
In a general election, we, of course, always have a primary election in June.
Mm-hmm.
I do believe that in this case, that the voter didn't necessarily remember because they thought they voted in the primary. But once we were able to prove to them that they voted in the general, they understood. So it is my responsibility to turn cases over to the DA if I see any potential voter fraud. In this case, I did not turn it over.
Sure.
Those voters simply didn't remember, and the system worked.
Mm-hmm.
They weren't allowed to vote. They voted in the beginning, but they weren't allowed to vote the second time. And so once we clarified that, the problem that I have is that the 150 people that were in line at Gateway, when this situation occurred, and these voters indicated, no, I didn't vote, and somebody voted instead of me, and all of those voters that were in line, they never get to hear the outcome, right? And so we hear a lot of, especially after the 2020 election, we've heard a lot through social media, through the news. It's unfortunately, people want to believe a lot of what they're hearing. And it could be because they don't know any different. Mm-hmm. But the point is the system worked. It did exactly what it was supposed to do. And hopefully the voters that did witness that, hopefully eventually they'll realize that it was a mistake on the voter,
right,
not on the system.
Right. And it all worked out.
And
nobody got arrested.
Nobody got turned in.
No, none of that.
We were good.
It was an honest mistake, it sounds
was an
like.
honest mistake, 100%.
Right,
yes.
but the system did catch it, and
Yes.
so, and sometimes we hear about maybe some of those things that maybe there's a problem with the registration or whatever, and aren't there provisional ballots that can be offered to voters in certain cases? It's not every time, I understand, but isn't that another option that sometimes you have at the polling place?
It is. We had poll worker training yesterday. I
Right.
mentioned to you earlier. So in the training, I instruct our workers to contact our office before they issue a provisional ballot. Our goal in our office is that the voter gets the full experience of voting. Voting provisionally and putting their ballot in an envelope and it come back to our office and then counted by the canvas board, to me, isn't a 100%
Not the
experience.
best situation.
It's not. A lot of times, and I have an amazing staff in the office. Everybody does a tremendous job. We can find those voters. If our poll work, and that's why I instructed our presiding judges to contact our office, we will find those voters. A lot of times it's a situation where you have an individual that has gotten married. So when they go in, and like I indicated, they state their name, their
New
year
name,
of birth.
maybe.
Yep. So they're giving them their current name,
Married
not
name.
not realizing that they haven't changed their voter registration. So, once we're on the phone with the voter and we are able to have a little bit more in-depth conversation, we can find that voter.
Gotcha.
And that voter can vote, put their vote in the tabulator, and they leave with a good experience of voting.
Right. Understood. But
yes.
that is still an option.
It is still an option that is provided to the voter.
Because you still want them to vote, right? You don't want to turn anyone away if they are illegally able to vote, right? Even if they're maybe not in the system or you can't find them right away or what have you. You never want to turn anyone away from a polling place.
That's correct. However, if a voter is not registered, and I want all
Yes.
the voters to understand this.
True.
If the voter is not registered and they vote provisionally, their vote still is not going to count.
That's true.
Okay. So in a way, I 100% do not want to mislead any of the voters.
Mm-hmm.
So that's why it's best to get us on the phone, let us find them. And I can tell them on the phone if, I will approve them to vote through the system, or my staff approves the provisional ballots. And if they're not registered and we cannot find them, then unfortunately their ballot won't be counted.
Sure.
So,
which is why when we hear about those reminders to register to vote or to make sure your voter registration is up to date prior to the election, you can't just do it day of. We don't have that option yet.
good. I'm glad you mentioned that.
Right. But people need to be aware of that because that is what can hang you up sometimes if you're not up to date.
Yes. So even if if you're registered and your name, you haven't changed your name, you're still in the system.
Mm-hmm.
You can still vote. If you haven't changed your address. Now, in this election, if you've moved, let's say, from Aztec to Farmington, so and you haven't updated your voter registration, your ballot is going to be with your Aztec address.
Races, yeah.
Your Aztec candidates.
Yeah.
And you may want to vote in the Farmington school bond election or for the college, maybe you're in one of the college board member districts. Through early voting, we do have same-day registration in our office. And, the voter, if you know that you need to make a change on your voter registration before you vote, you're welcome to come in and make the change and then vote right there in the county clerk's office. If you are not registered, you're welcome to come in, register, and vote. And that's called same-day registration. And no, this is not available on Election Day.
Okay.
It ends
But
on
now,
October 30th.
It is available.
Yes.
As of now till October 30th.
Yes.
Good to know.
Yes.
And that is that's pretty convenient too, I think, for folks, right? If they've forgotten or moved, like you said, or what have you, and they do want to make sure they're up to date, that's a fairly nice convenience thing to be able to do on that day before Election Day, as long as you get it done beforehand.
It is. So there's certain criteria.
Okay.
that they have to bring in. And if this is something that would affect you as a voter, I would recommend you contact my office. And that way we can make sure we provide you with the specific information that you need to bring in. It's different for college students. You know, it's just best to make sure you have everything before you get to the office. And that way it's a smooth transaction. So.
Very good. My guest this morning, Tanya Shelby, is here. She is the San Juan County Clerk. She is in charge of the upcoming election on November 2nd and all the other elections that we have, although there's much less now than there used to be because they are now consolidated. And I want to go back to talk a little bit about that consolidation of the elections, which we now have in New Mexico. And so we were talking before, we used to vote for city council candidates in March and school board members in February. And every time you have an election, I hear the cash register basically, right? Because it's expensive to do that. So by combining, which was the idea, we are saving taxpayers dollars, we're saving money by combining all of those. About how much does it cost to have an election if somebody wanted to do a special election? Do you have a running number?
So for the county tax question?
Yeah.
So part of the new legislation, every special election is all mail.
Okay.
So we have 77,000 registered voters in San Juan County. So to mail all of those voters a ballot, and print everything.
Yeah.
It was over $200,000.
Wow.
Just for that. So definitely the consolidation 100% is hopefully will reduce voter fatigue. We've got vote here signs out now at all of our early voting sites. When the voters go in, they will at least be able to vote for the county question.
Right. Very good. And that's everybody in the county is eligible to vote on that question. So that's so everybody should be going out to vote, whether it's early or on election day.
That's correct. I would like to stress that this is the first time that the municipalities have opted in.
Right. All of them. Yes.
Yes. So all Kirtland, Bloomfield, Aztec, and Farmington. So some of those some of those positions their terms were shortened, and some of them were extended. But they are all on our the ballot.
Right. And now all the terms are kind of synced up, aren't they? Or getting there the next cycle,
They will be, yes, after this. But if you're used to, as a municipal, living in the city limits, if you're used to voting for your municipal candidate, you need to make sure you vote in the November 2nd election, because that's when the candidates are now on the ballot.
Right. Don't watch for them in February. They'll already be in office by then, whoever wins.
That's correct.
That's what's going on. But good point. And again, when those terms were either lengthened or shortened, those were all agreed upon by those individual governmental entities. And so everybody approved all that months ago.
Scott, that's correct. When the legislation passed, the municipalities had the option to opt in. The first time around, the only municipality that opted in was the city of Farmington. And a lot of that was to save money.
Sure.
Prior to the county clerk's office conducting this election for the municipalities, the municipal clerks conducted them. So, you're again, the taxpayer dollar has to pay for these elections. So, this is the first time that, because municipal candidates in Farmington, they chose to extend their terms.
Mm-hmm.
The other municipalities chose to shorten, and that's how they ended up all on one ballot.
That's where we are today.
And that's where we are today.
And I would think that, again, and back then when the city clerks were doing the elections, they certainly wouldn't have the voting convenience centers all throughout the county and things like that. It was certainly a different way of doing the election, because they don't have the resources that your office has and the need for the technology that your office has.
So one thing with the legislation, it did force them to go so that the laws would be the same.
Makes sense.
In law, there used to be what was called a municipal code.
Right.
That was separate than so elections were conducted, as you indicated, differently, which is also confusing to the voters. So trying to bring everything under one umbrella, then the municipalities were then forced to follow the regular election code. And especially when you think of the town of Kirtland, and having to have early voting open on Saturdays. We're required to have it open. We're required to be open on Saturdays for all of our
Right.
county elections.
Right.
So, it was burdensome and expensive for the municipalities. So for the voters, I'm excited that, this is only our second one.
Right.
I do believe that once the voters get the hang of every other year being the nonpartisan election, then and getting in the groove of voting after it's crazy, but it's the first Tuesday after the first Monday,
right,
every November. I do believe that the voters we're going to see a trend, and we're going to see increased turnout.
Good. And that's another thing I wanted to ask you about too, because I would imagine for you and your staff, it's got to be a little frustrating sometimes to put all this work into an election and to see turnout as low as we maybe seen it in sometimes. Now, recent elections, I think, are a different story. But over the years, I'm sure you've seen some elections that you put in all this work and effort, and maybe we get, 30%, 40% turnout. Is that about where we are?
So some of the school elections that we actually had conducted
Right.
back in the years ago, we've seen as low as 2%.
Ouch.
Yes. And you've got to...
Which means races are decided by just a couple dozen votes, perhaps.
Yes. And the sad part about that is we're still required to have the same number of sites, the same number of workers, so it costs the same.
Right.
Okay. So and that is why I supported the consolidation.
Right. And when you say voter fatigue, I think that's what you're talking about, right? It's voters having to go back to the polls every few months to vote on a new something, like 2013, and now they're just having to go maybe once a year, twice a year, maybe.
And as a voter, right? You want to vote. You want to be able to voice your opinion and choose your candidates. And what was happening is with all of our elections, the voter would show up to the polls and they may not have nothing to vote. They may not even be in that school district, or maybe not even in the for the college, or even in the municipal candidates were the same way.
Right.
But now that security that once I go, I can vote.
Right.
I think that'll increase the numbers.
That would be great. And
Yeah.
that, I think, is, again, I think the legislation was great. Are other states kind of moving in this direction too? Are we part of the trend, or what have you heard nationwide?
I haven't researched it nationwide.
Okay.
I really haven't.
You're worried about what's going on here.
It's a lot to focus on
I understand.
on our county.
And so for you, in your job as county clerk, you work with the Secretary of State's office then when it comes to elections and report our results back to that office statewide. Is that how it kind of works?
The Secretary of State is the chief election official.
In
So
Mexico.
yes, there's 33 elected clerks, and we do report to the Secretary of State's office.
Got you. And that office kind of manages, if you will, the more statewide elections, or candidates. I would say candidates is what I probably mean to say. And those types of elections and things like that, when like a state representative or state senators are running, that's usually through that office?
So as far as filing, is
Yes.
that what you mean?
Right.
So yeah, like our presidential candidates and all of those are going to go through the Secretary of State's office. Now they're through legislation.
Yeah.
They'll do the state, a lot of the state offices, but there's in the past there's been multi-county, because we have a lot of representatives that represent
Their districts spread
McKinley
across
County, yes.
across state or county lines.
Yes,
Pardon me.
they used to have to go to the Secretary of State's office, but now they file with their home where they're registered, which county they're registered in.
Gotcha.
So there has been some changes to
Okay.
that too, and we always post all of that information on our website when filing day is. If anyone's interested in becoming a candidate, we've gotten a lot of great compliments on our website, and you try to provide as much information to the public.
Very good. And we'll repeat that address in just a second. We just have a couple of minutes remaining this morning, Tanya Shelby, to wrap up our conversation. But you mentioned filing day, and that's a really interesting, that's not necessarily changed with the times necessarily, because it's still an in-person event. You can't do it online. You actually have to go, don't you, and actually file in person?
And it's one day.
And
Correct.
only one day, right?
Yes.
By 5 o'clock. And
Yes.
if you get there late, you're so sad, right?
So the candidates for this election had to file on August 24th. And
Right.
it's 9 to 5. Not 5:01.
Right.
9 to 5.
Right. Not 8:57.
No.
And so your office is pretty busy that day, I would assume, depending on the elections. But I bet maybe a lot of folks come out. And are there some candidates maybe, and we don't have to name names, but are there some that come and look to see if they're maybe running unopposed, or if anyone's running unopposed, and maybe they'll sign up to be a competitor if the race looks a little empty?
So we do, but it's also on our website.
I see.
Again, I'm directing everybody to
Okay.
our website. It's real time.
You update that in real time.
Yes, we do. So if you're, if someone is considering being a candidate, but they're looking to see if someone else has filed, a lot of them now just watch the website.
I could lurk at home and
could.
refresh, and
Yep.
then get to Aztec if I want by 5 o'clock.
By 5,
If
yeah.
I want to
Yes.
put my name in the ring.
Yes.
I'm not running for anything, everybody. I just want to make that clear. Not. But interesting. So, but that's
Yeah.
how it works. Very, very good. Again, the website for the San Juan County Clerk, there are 2 C's in the address, so it's sjcclerk, CLERK.net.
Correct.
And that's where we can find all the information. And you'll post the results on election night, too. I know I use that site all the time to try to share with our listeners and viewers the results as they come in. And you do a great job of providing that to the community. So thank you.
Thank you.
And your staff. I know it's a group effort.
We have an amazing staff. I know I mentioned that, but I can't praise them enough. And yes, our election results will be on our website. Keep in mind, I know there's some questions a lot of time as to, why certain sites are taking longer to come in. Our reservation come in, they meet the helicopter. The helicopter flies them in. We usually don't get our reservation results until about 9:30ish. So.
Gotcha. And I would think that we're one of the few counties that have election results delivered by helicopter.
I think we are the only
On election
in
night.
New Mexico.
Maybe Alaska, maybe some other places, but
Grand Canyon.
Grand
I
Canyon.
know they do, but yes,
right.
Our county, we're 2 hours. Crystal's 2 hours away.
Yeah.
So.
You got to do something.
Yeah,
or
we
it's going to
do.
be later than 9 o'clock.
And we're grateful we have those resources.
No kidding. Very true. Well, it's a community effort, isn't it? Because
is.
that's another department that's helping you do that.
It is.
So wonderful. Tanya Shelby, I appreciate you coming in and sharing the information about the election that's coming up. All elections are important, so I know we would advise everybody to vote. If you're not registered, it's not too late.
Correct.
You can go and be registered, but you do need to do that before October 30th when early voting ends, and then Election Day on November 2nd.
Yes.
Okay? Thanks for coming in.
Thank you.
You're welcome. That's San Juan County Clerk Tanya Shelby, my guest this morning here on KSJE. KSJE is supported by the Farmington Civic Center, bringing a wide variety of live entertainment to the Four Corners. Country music, classic rock, and ballet, all on stage this fall. Also, on-stage theatrical performances of The Rocky Horror Show and the holiday classic A Christmas Carol. Find out more online at fmtn.org/shows. Did you enjoy that podcast? We hope that you did. And if you did, share it with your friends. And if you really want to keep podcasts like this coming, please support KSJE. You can do it easily online at ksje.com.